The early advancement exam officially commences as the professor instructs everyone to be ready. With the timer set, all students take their positions. Mark instructs one of his allies to stay close. Suddenly a flash appears, signaling the start. They all rush forward as time steadily ticks away. Their swift reactions result from rigorous training, but uncertainty lingers. Despite their concerns about the unknown challenges ahead, they all understand that they must push forward. 2 seconds pass while leaving only 20 meters to the cliff's edge. Mark sprints at full speed, fully aware that the key to success lies in precisely timing the teleportation. The distance covered is irrelevant, and it all comes down to executing the teleport at the perfect moment. Rushing toward the edge, he remains focused, while others closely follow behind. As 3 seconds pass, he realizes he is dangerously close, only 3 meters away. A bright light flashes as another student accelerates swiftly. Mark warns him to slow down, but his advice is ignored. Suddenly, another flash appears, and he finds himself merely 2 meters from the edge. At 3.5 seconds, some participants remain behind while the rest reach the edge while leaving only 1 meter to spare. Shirone has yet to arrive while trailing just a step behind. The spectators watch in shock as he leaps forward without teleporting. Defying expectations, he soars past the cliff's edge, now 2 meters beyond it. As the 4th second ticks by, all eyes remain fixed on him. In the middle of the test, Shirone recalls his discussion with Leon from a year ago. Their conversation had emphasized the importance of focusing on the present situation, rather than imagining the outcome. He had reminded him that fearing death after falling from the cliff was pointless. Instead, the focus should remain on the process itself. Remembering these words, he stays determined while concentrating solely on passing the test. Meanwhile, the spectators are stunned by his actions. As he leaps from the cliff, a bright flash appears. Realizing the urgency, he pushes himself forward while knowing he must act quickly before moving beyond the spirit zone. Another flash follows as he swiftly advances. Behind him, Mark struggles to keep up, shocked to see Shirone ahead. The students of Class 5 cheer for the bold contender who dares to jump. Amid the excitement, Shirone turns to Amy while recalling her earlier claim that Shirone lacked knowledge of magic. However, Amy clarifies that despite starting late, he has learned a great deal. She also knows that if Shirone manages the bouts effectively, he will maintain his lead. As he overtakes Mark, frustration builds within him. Another flash appears as he pushes forward, determined to reclaim his position. Meanwhile, Maria refuses to remain behind easily. However, she remembers her choice to stay in Class 7 while avoiding competition. To her, this was always meant to be a friendly challenge among classmates. But her reluctance to compete has kept her in the same class for 6 years. She despises being looked down upon and begins to worry that if Mark advances, survival in the competition will become even more difficult for her. By the end of the 3rd bout, the participants are divided into 3 groups. The first consists of Mark, his companions, and Shirone. The second group includes students who lag 3 meters behind, while the last comprises those who teleported out of fear. Among the remaining students, discussions arise. One participant speculates that Shirone lacks knowledge of flight magic and wonders if he will survive upon hitting the ground. Many begin to fall, unable to maintain control. One desperate student calls out for the professor's help while expressing his desire to quit. In response, the judges and spectators burst into laughter, amused by his plea. The names of those who have fallen are cancelled from the test. One participant yells in frustration while realizing there is no safety net on the ground. As they hit the ground, they grow even more agitated while blaming the professor for not informing them earlier. With that, the 3rd group is eliminated. Shortly after, the 2nd group meets the same fate. Mark observes that most participants have only managed to clear half the course. However, his real concern lies elsewhere, that Shirone is steadily pulling ahead while showing no signs of weakness. Confusion sets in as he recalls how breathless Shirone had seemed at the beginning of the exam. Suddenly, another flash appears. Professor Romy notices that Shirone is repeatedly using the compulsion skill, a clear sign of his remarkable talent. Meanwhile, Mark remains solely focused on catching up to him. Another professor acknowledges Rumi's keen perception while admiring her ability to sense such details. Sariel, while watching closely, is amazed at how efficiently Shirone increases his inertia, while wondering how he has mastered such a technique. Amy, on the other hand, perceives something different about him. Unlike other mages who rely on their subconscious minds to learn, he appears special. His ability to control his subconscious power is incredibly rare and difficult to achieve. As Mark continues forward, the realization dawns on him that our guy is on the verge of winning. Determined to stop him, he orders his teammates to attack. However, they hesitate while knowing that using their mental energy against him could weaken them. Meanwhile, Shirone keeps moving, but suddenly, one of Mark's allies appears in front of him. Shocked by the unexpected obstruction, he quickly assesses the situation. The opponent, with a tense expression, admits that he has no choice. He does not want to fail and insists that Shirone must be taken down. At that moment, our boy realizes his true intent, that he is preparing to attack. As they both plummet toward the ground, Mark's lackey manages to evade Shirone while causing only the latter to crash and sustain injuries. Our guy realizes his sequence has been disrupted, which suddenly drains his energy while leaving him on the verge of losing consciousness. He is going to faint, but he isn't ready for it. While the other student perceives our boy as an overwhelming force. Meanwhile, a student from Class 5, after observing their clash, remarks to others that something about the scene appears unusual. The student speculates that Mark's lackey might have altered his trajectory, nearly colliding with someone directly ahead of him. Another student confidently asserts that the action has been intentional. When questioned about the certainty of such a claim, he explains that one individual has obstructed an exit while another attacks from the side. They have cleverly exploited the instant nature and launch point of teleportation to lunge simultaneously. If the new participant hasn't deviated from course, the situation could escalate into chaos. The student further notes that, in a similar scenario, he would apply motion calculations to evade the situation. However, his boastfulness leads others to murmur among themselves, some agreeing with his logic while others find him arrogant. Nevertheless, they acknowledge that the instructors must have noticed the incident and likely have their own approach to handle it. Meanwhile, Mark revels in his apparent success while bursting into laughter and exuding confidence. He declares himself victorious while taunting his classmates as well as those from Class 6, and demanding they recognize his superiority. Shirone, however, observes that Mark holds a strong position and is poised to finish first. Realizing the urgency, he understands the need to accelerate if he intends to claim victory. Yet, he worries that widening the gaps between his movements could once again disrupt his rhythm. Instead, he resolves to quicken his pace slightly while adjusting his timing by half a beat more frequently. As the students observe the intense competition, many express astonishment at Shirone's rapid progress, while realizing that only he and Mark remain in the challenge. Some cheer for Mark while urging him to increase his speed. Amy, while watching closely, voices concern. She points out that since our guy is already injured, his reckless approach will only worsen his condition. Suddenly, an explosion erupts, leaving everyone in shock. Mark, caught off guard, reacts in disbelief, exclaiming that the blast has nearly taken his life. Meanwhile, the judges grow anxious upon realizing that the pathless bridge system device has escalated to level 10. Our guy, upon hearing this, is left stunned. Without hesitation, Professor Thad rushes toward the engine room to address the issue. At the same time, Professor Oliver, turning to the headmaster, insists that the exam needs to be halted immediately. Another faculty member hesitates, reminding the group that only 2 participants remain. He fears that canceling the test at this stage will spark relentless complaints from the students' families. However, the headmaster, visibly frustrated, rebukes the hesitation, demanding that the signal be sent at once. Shortly after, an announcement echoes across the arena, declaring the end of the exam. When Professor Thad notices the yellow signal, he immediately realizes the cancellation. Irritated, he anticipates an overwhelming number of complaints heading his way. Expressing his frustration aloud, he recalls warning someone about the exam's importance, and suspects that an individual might be intoxicated again. But as he approaches the engine room, he finds the door locked, leading him to a chilling realization that this is no ordinary mistake. Sensing someone's presence outside the room, he demands that they open the door immediately, warning that if they refuse, both the person and the door will be erased together. A voice responds from within, challenging him to proceed and insisting that no one will even notice their absence. A big flash appears and he heads toward it. Recognizing the voice, he addresses the individual, confirming that it belongs to Maria. Deeply concerned, he questions whether she grasps the severity of her actions, warning her that the consequences will extend far beyond simple school discipline. Despite his pleas, Maria refuses to comply, resigning herself to despair. She laments that everything is already over, believing that she is doomed to a miserable existence, especially now that Mark has advanced to Class 5. In her eyes, nothing in her current situation feels any different from torment, and as she breaks down in tears, she hints at an irreversible decision. Sensing her distress, Professor Thad reassures her that opening the door is unnecessary if she doesn't want to. It no longer matters, as the exam has been stopped, just as she wanted. Elsewhere, Mark, consumed by rage, reacts furiously to the cancellation signal, considering it an unbearable interference. Convinced that victory is within his grasp, he insists on finishing the battle to silence any doubts. Realizing he might not get another opportunity to utterly defeat Shirone, he resolves to act immediately. They go swiftly into the maze. Shortly after, someone rushes to inform the headmaster that both Mark and Shirone have entered the maze. Upon hearing this, the headmaster erupts in fury, cursing their reckless behavior. As they both enter the maze, Professor Oliver wonders why they are not stopping. She feels the need to stop them while knowing it could hurt them, and also questions what Thad is doing. She turns to the headmaster, but he is too frustrated to answer. But Headmaster is thinking that he misunderstood our boy who might be different, but at the end is someone who is driven by greed. Meanwhile, both contenders move deeper into the maze. Amy and Sariel watch them while growing concerned. They believe they must do something to save them. Amy, in shock, notices that they are entering the 10th level, a stage meant only for professionals. As they step in, a sudden burst of rocks erupts. Our boy reaches the 10th level and quickly realizes he cannot dodge the traps in his path. His mental strength is deteriorating at an alarming rate. Alongside him, Mark pushes forward, determined to get ahead. He craves recognition while wanting everyone to see him as the winner. Moving swiftly, he considers himself unmatched in skill and urges his opponent to stay back. However, in a split second, the other boy jumps up while triggering a warning in the 10th level. On the other hand, Maria sits on the ground while contemplating why the judges drag students into such deadly competitions, while forcing them under immense pressure. Thad, standing nearby, tells her she is mistaken, but she refuses to accept it. She insists the school only values talented students while ignoring the ordinary ones. He responds by revealing that he also attended this school. Recalling the past, he explains that when he was in the senior class, she had just joined the school. He asks if she remembers or if she has ever heard rumors about him, but she denies it. He then shares that he spent 5 years in Class 5 due to his lack of abilities. Watching others advance while he remained behind filled him with anger. However, Maria, still frustrated, refuses to believe him, convinced that he is lying. He recalls his past discussion with the headmaster, where he had gotten into trouble. The headmaster had warned him never to let anyone surpass him, yet he had always felt ignored. In response, the headmaster had told him that a mage could never compare himself to others. Instead, he should focus on his own growth, as that is the key to erasing one's sense of self-doubt. If a mage merely follows others, he ultimately loses himself. Meanwhile, Mark moves deeper into the maze when he suddenly realizes the path ahead is blocked. Confusion sets in as he notices this is not the same route he had entered from. Panic takes over as he understands there is no escape. Fear grips him and he cries out for help, his nerves overwhelming him. Spectators watching the competition yell in distress, but then, to everyone's surprise, Shirone appears and grabs him. Without hesitation, he pulls Mark away, saving him from stepping into the blocked pathway. The students of Class 7 watch in astonishment as our boy rescues Mark. One of them points out that in an advancement exam, competitors are not supposed to save their opponents. However, another argues that winning is not as important as saving a life. Among them, one student remains deep in thought while analyzing our boy's movements. Mark, still shaken, continues to cry out for help. Our dude reassures him while explaining that he is trying to guide him away from the traps. He understands the maze's patterns and believes escaping is possible by following them. However, the watching students soon realize something alarming, that the traps are actively following the contenders while preventing them from progressing vertically. Recognizing the danger, our boy quickly determines that moving forward is futile. Without hesitation, he decides to retreat. The crowd erupts in cheers while celebrating his decision, acknowledging that he has chosen the wisest path. The students discuss Shirone's strength and dedication while realizing how talented he truly is. They begin to understand that they have misjudged him all along. As their perception shifts, they start cheering for him while urging him to be careful. Amy, however, remains uncertain about whether he has trained to the final level of the exam. She knows that advancement is a crucial step in the journey to becoming a mage. Reflecting on his determination, she realizes that he has always aspired to master magic at a professional level. Meanwhile, Thad continues his conversation with Maria while emphasizing the necessity of competition in reaching the final stage. He believes that no one should rush the process. Instead, by progressing steadily, they ultimately become mages. She questions whether it is already too late for her, and in response, he offers his help. He asks if she is willing to try again. Overwhelmed with emotion, she begins to cry. At that moment, the headmaster arrives while declaring that the exam will proceed as planned. Taking full control of the situation, he assures everyone that he will be responsible for whatever happens next. The spectators cheer as our boy moves forward while holding Mark. He notices that the traps behave as if they are alive, their patterns irregular and unpredictable. Disappointment settles in as he realizes the difficult position he has put himself in by trying to save Mark. Meanwhile, Mark continues crying for help, terrified of dying. Determined to find a way out, he decides to perceive the entire structure as a single entity while focusing on each part individually, which is an approach he has experienced before. He also recognizes its similarity to schism. A sudden flash appears and he surges forward while breaking through the traps. With precise movements, he dodges each obstacle while leaving them all behind. The spectators watch in shock, unable to believe what they are witnessing. Amy and Sariel observe with astonishment, while Professor Oliver, while standing beside them, wonders how he is managing such a feat. Meanwhile, the headmaster contemplates whether, in moments of crisis, individuals can achieve extraordinary accomplishments. However, He recalls that their limit lies in self-satisfaction, and he finds none in the boy. He starts to question whether this contender has any limits at all. Unfazed, our boy keeps moving forward while leaving the traps behind. Professor Romy watches with keen interest, fascinated by his unwavering focus. She soon realizes that his spirit zone density has increased to 99.9%, while indicating that he might be on the verge of breaking free. While impressed by his talent, she knows it does not diminish the danger. Traps continue to appear, and he quickly assesses the limited space between them. A full 10-meter teleport proves impossible. Adjusting his approach, he reduces the distance by a tenth while maneuvering with swift right and left movements. With relentless precision, he leaves the traps behind while advancing steadily through the maze. He watches the next trap approaching and quickly realizes that moving straight ahead is impossible due to the narrow gaps. In this situation, he must act with extreme speed. Without hesitation, he accelerates while moving within the blink of an eye. Iruki, while observing closely, feels a surge of excitement as he recognizes that Shirone is about to use Rainbow Drop. That is a technique involving the bending of light. The others, puzzled, question how light can bend when it is supposed to travel in a straight line. Iruki explains the fundamental principles behind it. He states that the derivative of a circle is an infinite straight line, while meaning Shirone has divided his teleportation intervals down to the millisecond. The spectators, amazed, wonder how he is managing to calculate everything so precisely. Iruki, equally impressed, considers the limitless potential of Shirone to be truly extraordinary while recognizing him as a genius. The other students, witnessing his feat, share the same sentiment. Above, Shirone moves at incredible speed, still holding mark as he dodges each trap with flawless precision. However, as he presses forward, his gaze locks onto an enormous obstacle ahead, which is the maze of the dragon. Professor Oliver searches for Professor Thad, wondering what he is doing. Meanwhile, Mark grows increasingly unconscious, his strength fading. In a panic, he cries out while shouting that a monster stands before them. Our boy, focused on the path ahead, plans to maneuver around the obstacle by routing from the left. However, Mark continues to yell while pleading to be let go, his fear overwhelming him. At the same time, Professor Oliver remains intent on finding Thad. When she finally spots him, she urges him to stop the maze immediately. Confused, he questions her concern while reminding her that the test had been cancelled. However, she quickly informs him that the test is still ongoing, and that both contenders remain trapped inside. Shocked by the revelation, he wastes no time and rushes from the spot. Professor Romy also arrives while running toward them. With urgency, she announces that Shirone is heading straight toward the maze of the dragon. Panic spreads among them as they realize the danger he is about to face. Fear grips everyone as they watch the contenders approach the deadly maze. Even the headmaster, now alarmed, attempts to intervene and stop them. As tension reaches its peak, only 1 second remains before Professor Romy departs from the scene. Only 1 second remains before Professor Romy leaves to approach Professor Oliver. As our boy heads toward the dragon's maze while holding Mark, he realizes that he's not dead yet. The spectators try to stop them, worried for their safety. Sweat pours from him while freezing mid-air. With just 1 second left until impact, he decides to stay calm. Since he's still alive, he thinks through the situation and tries to figure out an easy way to exit. As the seconds tick down, only 1 centisecond remains. He initially believes there are 9 teleports, which should be enough to escape, but quickly realizes he's made a mistake. He hadn't factored in the distance to Mark. With only 1 millisecond left, he scrambles to find another way out. The students watching are incredibly worried, and the headmaster is also trying to stop them, aware of the danger. In a swift movement, he suddenly picks the correct pattern. A flash appears, and both he and Mark are seen soaring through the sky. The spectators gasp, shocked by what they've just witnessed. Within moments, they land on the ground, unharmed. Everyone wonders if he has truly made it through. Professor Romy is left speechless. Our boy can't remember how it all happened but wonders if he has actually escaped the maze. Meanwhile, the pathless bridge devices disengage. One of the students mentions that this was a special level of the senior class, and he has successfully passed it. Now, while sitting on the ground, he relaxes while thinking that although it felt like the end, he managed to make it through. Sariel is both happy and surprised. At the same moment, Amy realizes that, even if only for a brief time, he actually seemed cool. His success is a result of his dedication and the effort he put into his practice. The students congratulate him while praising his determination, especially since he is only in class 5. Just then, Professor Oliver appears. Frustrated, she wonders if she has missed the entire exam because of Professor Thad. However, the professor reassures her that he has done his best and will explain everything later. Despite this, she remains annoyed. Turning to the headmaster, she suggests that, since the students have reached the end, they should announce the results. However, the headmaster remains in shock, finding the entire situation miraculous. Meanwhile, he also expresses his gratitude to the R boy for showing him the light. Professor Oliver notices the headmaster's unusual behavior. Professor Thad then explains that, in the past, the headmaster earned the nickname Light of House Murphy for redefining the photon, a feat that also won him the Golden Circle Award. However, driven by greed, he abandoned both his brilliance and status. As Professor Thad approaches him, he remarks that their school now has a new brilliant star. The headmaster, still deep in thought, responds that watching Shirone's abilities reminded him of his own past. For the second time, he feels his heart racing. The headmaster commends all the participants for their bravery, while emphasizing that it will help shape their futures. He then announces our hero as the winner. The spectators erupt into cheers, but suddenly Mark appears. The other students assume he is about to argue for the title while considering he had launched multiple attacks and even been saved by him. They murmur among themselves while believing that Mark should not challenge the outcome. However, as Mark steps forward, he acknowledges that our boy is a true genius and admits that he had completely misjudged him. Bowing in front of him, he takes full responsibility as a mage while leaving everyone stunned. His team members also step forward, apologizing sincerely. They too bow before him while asking for whatever punishment he deems fit. Instead of reprimanding them, he simply advises them to strive for better lives while choosing not to punish them. Exhaustion weighs on him, and all he desires at that moment is rest. Meanwhile, Amy urges Sariel to leave with her, but Sariel insists for her staying by his side. However, she finds no opportunity to do so, and the realization dawns on her that it may be her turn to work hard for her exams. Just then, our boy calls out to Amy while telling her that he is coming for her. Both girls are taken by surprise. Sariel, even more shocked that he called Amy's name in front of such a large crowd, feels an unexpected pang of jealousy. She starts to see him as even more intriguing. Later, after Shirone finally gets a good rest, he wakes up without any recollection of that moment. Meanwhile, Professor Romy reflects on the events inside the dragon's maze while wondering if she had somehow lost track of him along the way. In the disciplinary board, a hearing takes place. Professor Thad states that Maria is willing to accept reprimand, but Mark and the conductor of the engine room argue against her punishment. Mark insists that guilt should be shared, as several others come forward with confessions while revealing their scheme to attack Shirone during the test. As tensions rise, our guy wonders if he is truly ready to take responsibility for his actions. He argues that Maria was forced into an impossible situation and that her actions in the engine room were never meant to harm anyone. However, the headmaster declares that she will still receive disciplinary punishment. At that moment, Shirone steps forward while offering to accept punishment as well. He acknowledges that he ignored the signal and entered the maze regardless. While it may not have been intentional at the time, he also admits that he dragged Mark through the dangers. The headmaster, taken aback, realizes this is an unexpected turn of events. Professor Thad points out that everything is unfolding just as the headmaster had wanted. The students, once filled with competition, pride, and jealousy, now admit their faults and choose to return to the path of a professional mage. Even this moment has become a lesson. With the final decision made, everyone receives punishment. Professor Thad, astonished, remarks that he has never witnessed anything like this since the school was made. In the end, every student present faces consequences, and Maria and Mark are suspended for 2 months, while the rest receive 1-month suspensions. As for the winner, Shirone, Professor Oliver wonders why he continued into the maze despite the signal to stop. He reflects for a moment, then admits that he simply did not want to lose. Solving the maze's puzzle became his only focus, and beyond that, he barely remembers anything. Professor Oliver realizes that, despite his calm appearance, Shirone possesses an aggressive nature. She also observes that in many ways he is just like other boys his age. Meanwhile, Shirone returns to his room and lies down on his bed to rest. As he drifts into sleep, his dreams take him back to the maze. In his vision, he sees himself erasing his presence and dividing his teleports into multiple parts. It feels as though he is scattered across the world while existing in different places at once. He remembers how he was dragged into the maze, the space around him stretching into infinity. Suddenly, his eyes snap open as the sound of a piano reaches his ears. 3 days have passed since the test ended. Surprised, he realizes he has been lost in his dreams for all this time. Reflecting on his experiences, he acknowledges the value of the book Amy had given him on magic. Grateful for her help, he decides to return the book along with a small gift of appreciation. Determined, he makes his way to Integrated Training Ground 2, where he finds Sariel and Amy. As he arrives, Sariel greets him warmly and inquires about his well-being. He expresses his gratitude to both of them and presents a token of appreciation. With a thoughtful gesture, he offers them apples. Amy, taken aback, looks at the apples in surprise. Shirone tells Amy that he has read the book she gave him and noticed her drawing of apples. Curious, she opens the book and realizes how he gets this knowledge. Suddenly, she runs away while leaving both Shirone and Sariel in shock, especially since their class is about to begin. As Amy dashes off, Suriel instinctively follows her. Although Amy has moved up to the advanced class, she struggles with a particular problem she has yet to solve. Time passes, and after 1 month Shirone returns to class. The students eagerly welcome him back while telling him they have saved a seat for him. Now that Class 7 has returned from suspension, they seem excited to have things back to normal. However, Shirone finds their repeated announcements unnecessary. He begins to wonder if he has become intimidating to his class fellows. Seated in class, he notices Suriel approaching. She asks if she can sit beside him, to which he agrees while referring to her as his guest. With a teasing tone, she remarks that he looks bored without his girlfriend. However, he counters while suggesting that she seems more affected by the situation than he is. She admits to it and reveals that this is precisely why she took the advancement test. At first, she only wanted to graduate, but Amy's constant motivation has inspired her to push further. Now, she is seriously considering becoming a soldier. Shirone is taken aback by this revelation. Curious, Suriel shifts the conversation toward his relationship with Amy. However, he deflects and instead questions whether becoming a soldier and engaging in warfare would be dangerous. She dismisses the concern while explaining that war isn't the only factor to consider. Soldiers receive financial support and other benefits while making it a viable career choice. She then informs him that Amy has chosen long-distance magic as her major and aims to specialize in espionage. This revelation makes Shirone reflect on his own concerns. He wonders why he has been worrying about Amy so much. In Class 5, students must select their specialization to become mages, a decision that grants them significant advantages. Just then, Nate approaches and asks if Shirone has been training alone again. Offering his assistance, he expresses his willingness to help. Shirone appreciates the gesture while recognizing that Nate has an exceptional affinity for electricity, a rare and valuable skill. As he observes his new surroundings, he realizes that Class 5 feels vastly different from Class 7. He speculates that this change might stem from the students being closer in age and displaying greater maturity. Before he can dwell on the thought, several members of Class 7 appear while calling out to him. They insist that he listen to them at least once. Curious, he asks what they want to discuss, briefly wondering if the topic will involve chemistry, biology, or literature. However, to his surprise, they instead ask about his intentions specifically, whether he is more interested in Professor Romy or Professor Oliver. The unexpected question catches our dude off guard, but before he can respond, Nate immediately reacts while acting as if the choice is obvious. At first, Shirone feels relieved while thinking Nate shares his view. However, Nate then declares his support for Oliver while admiring her intelligence. In contrast, another boy strongly disagrees while arguing that Romy's protective nature makes her more appealing. Meanwhile, as the discussion continues, someone turns to Shirone and asks for his opinion. Feeling uncertain about how to fit in, he carefully responds while saying he respects both professors too much to choose between them. However, a boy insists that he will explain the correct answer later. Just then, their conversation is interrupted when someone arrives. Immediately, the group shifts its attention and greets Iruki, who joins them casually. They jokingly mention how the previous discussion was just about the attractiveness of their teachers. At the same time, Shirone observes how effortlessly Iruki interacts with the group. Nate introduces them while pointing out that Shirone has probably never met Iruki before since he usually keeps to himself. Iruki, however, greets him confidently and reveals that he already knows about him while suggesting that almost everyone at school does. Suddenly, Shirone remembers Iruki's voice and realizes he has heard it before. When they shake hands, our boy remembers Iruki once advising not to hesitate and to stay focused on his goal of becoming a mage. Grateful, he thanks him and explains that he was able to understand schism concept because of him. However, Iruki bluntly responds by saying our guy is a lot more interesting in person. Unsure of how to interpret this, Shirone feels confused about whether it was an insult or not. Fortunately, Nade laughs nervously and reassure him that Iruki speaks that way to everyone. Before leaving, Iruki wishes our boy luck and warns him that his class is full of stubborn people. Nade asks if he plans to stay for the lesson. He simply replies that he doesn't like it. This response surprises him, who quietly questions his lack of interest in magic class. Finally, he apologizes for Iruki's behavior while explaining that although he may seem difficult at first, he is not a bad person once people get to know him. Our dude responds by considering him special. One of the boys, however, dismisses the idea of trying to understand him while saying that it would only be a waste of effort. He describes Iruki as a genius, though more on the eccentric side.